Hi friends, and welcome to my weekly live stream. My name is Jerome from Uno Platform, and I'm spending about an hour every week taking a look at Uno issues and discussing with people that are live on the stream, talking about Uno and .NET and Visual Studio. And I just updated my Visual Studio to the latest preview 7, and maybe we It looks like my camera for some reason just dropped, and let me take a look at what happens there. It started to happen a while back, and I'm not sure if it's related to some temperature that's happening. In Montreal, the temperature has gone up a little bit, and I wonder if it's caused by this. So I may need to just deactivate the camera and activate it again, and maybe it will work again. There you go. Okay, that's better. Let's see if it's gonna hold. So if you're using OBS, there's a nice button that's called activate deactivate to on the camera, so that we can get something working better. Volume is a bit low. That is interesting. Maybe I'm a bit too far. Is it better now? We'll see. Well, it looks like it's the same as usual, but maybe it's a bit different than I did before, but we'll see. Maybe I'll talk a bit louder. Good. Okay, so this week we're going to talk about we're going to continue talking about an issue that we were discussing last week, which was an issue that was around XBind not working on flyout in an application that a developer opened an issue for, and we boiled it down to one specific feature that was inside of Uno that was not placed at the right location, which was transitively pushing data context at the wrong location. So let's go back to what that was. But before that, I see José's here as usual. Hello, José. Thanks for joining. McNets as well, Dominique, and probably a few others that I'm not seeing and haven't talked. Welcome. So don't hesitate to ask questions or discuss that. What I'm looking at. So the issue was this one, if I remember correctly. I think is it that one? It was the menu flyout with the scroll viewer. There you go. Okay, so let's start the app and let's take a look again at what the issue was last week. Let's see, Andres is here. Hola. So the issue was that when we clicked on a button, we could see that on the first item, for some reason, I mean, at least visually, we were having a binding here. So I modified the template here. We could see that in here. Where is it? There you go. So we had a button. And in that button, we have so the click that's supposed to open the flyout that's defined at the top. And it's supposed to be showing up properly at the right location. So what we're doing is in the click event of that button. So it's called refresh here, but it's actually just a click, and we're not refreshing anything. I'm sorry, was it? I don't know, that's the invite on the click. So no, the refresh was at the top, sorry. So the click on the button is button context click here. And we're invoking that method, which you ignore that part, which was for debugging. We're showing a context menu at the location of the element that was clicked. So the center of the event. And so that's that button. What that will do is open the pop-up on that button, and using that pop-up that's defined at the top here. So it's the menu flyout. And the reason for all of this failing, and that's where it got interesting at the end, is that I data bound the text of the the current data context on the content of the button. And we could see that, and if I do a refresh, you can see that when I click the button, the text that's bound here goes away. Well, not in the second refresh for some reason, so we're probably going to try to figure that one out. But if I restart the app, you'll see that when I click the button, the text of the button goes away and the button goes away. And it's not supposed to do that. So what that means is that the data context of the button is changing because its content change cameras, I would guess, because it's a bit annoying today. Not liking it that much for some reason. Let's try one more. Yeah, camera died again. Okay, so let's see if it continues. If it doesn't, I'm probably changing the resolution maybe so that it goes a little bit lower. Maybe no, I'm not sure. Okay, so let's see if it holds. If it doesn't hold, I'll move my camera away so it doesn't impact too much. Okay, so we can see here that the button here, so the content is moving away, and one of the reasons for this is that inside of the pop-up, and we got that actually. So let's go back to why we determined that the issue was caused by one specific property. Is that when we are launching the app with the debugger, you can see that I hooked onto the content property of the button, and that content property is not supposed to change, but it does, and it does when I click on the button. And we can see when taking a look at the stack frames of that event. So when we click the button and the content's not supposed to change, but it does, we can see that in the flyout base, show out core, and placement target, the set placement target is so I'm going to be disabling the camera for now because it's not working properly. So that's actually quite interesting, which means that there's something happening in the placement target property which changes the content property. And we're going to be looking at that method. So the show out core method, and the show at core method. If I open the file again, it wants to. Okay, so no, for some reason it's opening the file as a diff. Okay, show at core may not be in that method. So let's open the solution completely so we can navigate the code. And so we're in net 7 here, which means that we can open the SvgImageSource filter. And we're going to be navigating back to the usage of that method, of that property, and we can, oh, it was in flyout base. So, okay, so if we go into flyout base, so the right version of flyout base. And we search for show out core, we're going to see that the pop-up placement target property is being set at that location. And this is causing the content property to be set to null. And one of the reasons for this to happen is caused by the fact that pop-up is created in the app as a resource. And because it's created as a resource here, it doesn't have any data context. And because it doesn't have any data context, it's being forced to propagate the data context down to the placement target itself, so to the button, and that causes the content of the pop-up to become the placement target to inherit the data context of the pop-up, so it becomes null. So that causes the issue. So what we're going to do, and that's something that Uno is doing to itself. Originally we had effects arrange here, and by default, all properties inside of Uno, which are of type dependency object, will implicitly have the data context being propagated. But in that context, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't set the data context to flow through. So to test all of this, we're going to be creating a runtime test. And I think we do have some tests that are for pop-ups or flyouts, maybe. I don't remember if we do have flyouts. Let's see. Given flyout, yes, we do have tests for flyouts. Very good. We're going to be able to take some of those. I don't know if we have one for binding. We do have some for binding, which is good. Okay. Okay. And we should be able to take, we can see that with some stack panels that are set as content of a flyout for some reason, but we're going to be creating a new instance of that test so that we get the same behavior. Okay. So let's duplicate that test, and we're going to make one that is specifically built for testing that particular behavior of the flyout content flyout placement target, not propagating its content. So we have many flyout here, but let's create one for flyout. So we're going to make a new folder for flyout pages, and we're just going to take one of those pages and just rename what we have, so we don't spend too much time with Visual Studio trying to do something that we don't want. So it's a placement target binding that we're changing. So we're going to be calling that exactly this way. And in there, we're going to be taking what we've set, what we've found here. So we're going to be doing the exact same behavior. So we have a menu flyout that's declared as resources of the page. It's not supposed to be having any particular behavior. So we had some placement that's correct. And then we're just going to put a button just in the middle, for which we have to add a binding in the content, just to ensure that we have the right behavior. And we are going to do on click. Actually, do we need to actually click on this? Maybe not. Maybe we don't need to have an event handler. Maybe we can do all of it during the test. So let's try from the test. So what we need to have is, when we're creating our page, we need to have a data context, so that the content of the button is going to be showing what we need. And once we have opened everything, we're going to validate that even though we've shown the flyout at a specific location using a parent, that the binding is not being overridden. So if we say that our SUT data context, so it's our placement target binding. I don't know if we probably need to have, yeah. Oh, the namespace is not the right one. So we need to change that to flyout pages. Same for the XAML here. And I'm not too sure what it's complaining. Okay, it's complaining because the method is async, and I haven't added the anything to await. Okay, so we say that our data context is supposed to be 42, and then we are going to be opening. We're going to be opening a pop-up at the location of the button. So it's called my button. We're going to change the field modifier so that it can be accessed from the runtime test. We're going to make the field public. And if I'm going into my button, I need to use the context flyout again. So same thing here. I need to use, I need to set it to public so that I can access the field that's available here. So I need to do context flyout dot, I don't remember the exact name of the method that we had in the main page. It's show at. So we're going to do show at. And we're going to be so it's SUT.context file because it's a member of the system under test here, and we're talking about the SUT.myButton. So we're going to be showing the pop-up at that location specifically. I probably need to do some wait for idle a little bit, otherwise I'm not going to get anything useful. And first we need to make the test fail. So what we're going to do is change the pop-up back to its original value, which was the effect arranged, and not have the data context flow through. And I'm not sure. Sometimes we do have here. Okay, so we have to, let's do this for now. We're going to close all pop-ups at the end. So in the finally, to make sure that if the test fails, but we need to have the pop-up that closes properly, we need to close the pop-up, close the flyout at the end. There's supposed to blinking all around. Looks like I have a USB hardware problem for some reason. Looks like it's going to be time for changing some motherboard. Not particularly a good time, but let's the content of my button is supposed to be what I put in the data context. So it's supposed to be equal to the data context. So that's what I had originally here. So the binding, so I'm binding to the data context of the page, and it's not supposed to be changed by the fact that I'm opening a menu flyout around it. Okay, so that should be good enough. Let's see what we get. So any of you tried our new Visual Studio Code extension with mobile debugging? We've been having some interesting feedback people trying it out and finding some interesting scenarios that we haven't found. So that's pretty nice. What about it? We know that we're having issues with the OmniSharp not loading all the projects properly, so it kind of dies in the middle. Unfortunately, that's not something that we can adjust. I mean, it's OmniSharp, so we just having the extension depend on OmniSharp. So if OmniSharp doesn't load the project or the solution properly, it's kind of out of our control. But we're tracking what OmniSharp is doing, and we'll see if there's something that we can help there to fix it. But otherwise, if you have anything else that you've seen, let us know. It's always interesting to have feedback from users. I know we have people that have been trying it out. I think that's Andres actually that tried doing some Linux development with Android. So that was nice, and being able to debug your app on Android is it's always interesting. Even though it's not officially supported by Microsoft to debug Android devices. Oh, it's interesting. So yeah, so that's the idea with what we've been doing with VS Code. So if you have any update, let us know. Okay, so I'm looking for a test here, and that test is supposed to be called, so it will be when placement target binding. Okay, so do I see? Okay, so there's a clipping issue for what it seems here. I have to take a look at that one, but so there it is, and we can see that the data context is null, though I'm not too sure if we validated that the data context is actually modified properly to begin with. So let's see if we, before we show at, if our data context is being propagated properly. I don't see the hot reload button enabled. I probably disabled it for some testing. Looks like have I disabled it? Yes, Gal, my camera is acting up, so I disabled it completely. So we have XAML hot reload, .NET hot reload, and it is enabled. So maybe there's something missing here. Maybe it's because it's running on the WSL. Okay, that's not a big deal. Okay, so actually, I run it too fast. So we need to run the test that is called when placement target binding. Okay, so we expected 42, but is it the right line? I don't know. So let's run it again. Okay, so we can see that the data context of the button is appropriate when starting the test. And once we open the pop-up, we can see that the content becomes null immediately. And that's where Dominic is saying, I've been using it almost daily for my school project. I'm using it on Surface Go and has been working great. I haven't encountered any issues. Well, that's very good. That's very good to know. So talking about VS Code, obviously. So now let's go take a look at and try to enable the fix that we had. So in Popup, we should be enabling the value does not inherit data context. So we don't want the data context to flow through the property that is called placement target, so that when we invoke the show at here, the data context will not flow through to the button. So let's see if we start it again, if it works properly. So maybe you've seen, I'm running on WSL, and this is WSL using WSLG, which is a Wayland server that's been backported to Windows 10, and it's also available in Windows 11. There are some steps that are available on the WSLG GitHub repository, so you can do the same and set up your application to run directly on Windows 10, as if it were running on Linux, where it actually is running on Linux, but it shows up its UI using Windows. And what I'm doing here is debugging the Uno app that I've built to test Uno on itself, but using WSLG. So that's why we can see that the window is looking a little bit different, because it's running using a GTK host. Okay, that's something weird here. We're supposed to be saving the state of this, and it looks like we're not for some reason. Placement target binding. Let's run and let's see if it works this time. And we have our button content at 42. So that means that the bug is fixed. And we have a regression test that is available also, so that we can validate that we are not breaking this behavior in the future. So there you go. There's one less issue in Uno. So let's see if we have other property in the same area that may have the same kind of issue. So if we take a look at dependency property register, maybe we can find something. Okay, so we have padding, we have light dismissible. That one's a brush but doesn't inherit in any way. We have a pop-up panel, but that one is supposed to be inheriting some of it at least. And we have light dismissible overlay mode. Okay, so that's the only one that is supposed to be having a placement target to change in the data context that needs to be validated. So what we did is sample app that was provided by the user, the developer that opened the issue. And then we created runtime tests to validate that the propagation of the data context is actually being disabled in that context when we're invoking show at on a context flyout. And then we can make a PR out of this. That's it. So I'm just going to be pushing this in a small branch. And we're calling this flyout, no, placement data context. And that's going to be fixed very soon. So we're using, I don't know if you've been, if all of the listeners here, at least some of the on the chat that have been contributing to Uno, but we're using conventional commits, so that's why we have this prefix in front, and we're using this to generate the release notes for our releases, so it needs to be set properly. So propagate target in placement target, I think it is target placement. I don't remember. Placement target property. There we go. And let's push. Okay. So that was the first issue, and yeah, it was a quick one, so probably will help Frost Dark here. So now let's take a look at the second one. The second one is all about SvgImageSource, and it was implemented by Martin, one of our contributors and a core member of Uno. But he did not implement the ms-appdata feature there. If we take a look at the implementation of this, we can see that there's a to-do here that says when we're in SvgImageSource, when we're getting an open source from a file that is in ms-appdata, we will not get anything that's being shown. So one of the interest of ms-appdata, if you don't know, so it's basically when you're, we can probably take a look at that. So if we let's go open that SVG. Let's make another another branch so we can fiddle around this. So let's close the solution, and we're going to be going back to the Wasm. Let's see if I'm back. I'm trying to reopen my camera to see if it works a little bit better. Maybe a time. Okay, so I'm going to be opening the Wasm solution filter, and we can see that we're in net 7. For net 7, we can go for WebAssembly and SvgImageSource. So let's go for Wasm. And what we're going to do there is take a look at the samples that are already there. So ms-appdata is actually quite interesting. So it's a way for URI accepting controls or features to use local files that are in storage folders. So we're talking about, actually pulled up the documentation here. So you got ms-appx, which uses the files that have been bundled with the app at build time, so content or well, mostly content. And then there's a way to get files that are located in separate folders. So for instance, you can use ms-appdata /local, temp, or roaming, and those are going, you can write using storage files or the file API, and write there. And then if a control in Uno or another API uses or knows about ms-appdata, and it looks like it's not working for me. Okay. So there you have it. That's the idea behind ms-appdata. So it allows to load files explicitly, and even if they're located in the local file system. Now, what's interesting about Visual Studio is about WebAssembly is that the file system is actually located in memory at this time, and it's an index DB. So we can actually take a look at that part specifically. So let's build the app while we're talking about this. So we can probably go take a look at that directly in the NuGet.info actually. So the files are stored in an index DB that's created automatically for your application, and those are actually file system, which probably don't have anything at this time because we're not storing anything in that application. But when we're going to be using ms-appdata, we're going to read files from those locations explicitly. So the reason we need this is that probably people are just downloading SVG files from some API, or maybe extracting them from zip files, or maybe just generating those files and SVG files, and they want that content to be provided directly to the browser as in the image control. So what we're going to do is implement that part specifically. So we already do have some parts of Uno that are implementing this, and we can see that we get a bitmap image as well that doesn't have support for ms-appdata. We're going to be doing SvgImageSource first. Okay, so if we search for ms-appdata, there are multiple other locations where we're actually using ms-appdata, and we have helpers to evaluate the content of the URI. And particularly go into, and we have something that's called AppData URI Evaluator, which is probably going to be loading the file at the right location or something. So we're going to try to figure that out. With regards to image itself, and take a look at how SVGs are loaded. There's probably some tests down there that are using SvgImageSource. There you go. You can see here that we have SvgImageSource from stream. And from stream is probably just reading the file from a stream though. So let's go take a look at that specific SvgImageSource from stream. What does it do? Source from stream. So that page is using ms-appx. Okay, so interestingly, it's able to go and find those files and load them up. So it's not really from stream. It works. So we can see that you have a set source async that is using from stream. So we're loading the file from the application URI, so using the ms-appx. And we're downloading we're reading the file and then feeding it back to the SvgImageSource as a stream. So that means that the control itself is able to take a binary byte, an arbitrary byte array and provide it to the SVG control and is able to show it. So what we're going to do is just piggyback on that behavior and see how we can set the result properly. And we can probably see a few things here. So we have some subscription and SvgImageSource. So that one seems generic. And we're probably going to have some code in Wasm that does that supports that behavior. There you go. Okay, so we have the opens from stream here. With the iRandom access stream content type, which is probably not what we need exactly, but what we can do is probably just do the same that we had here and use open stream. We can see that we have a data URI that is available, but we can probably just take that content with access stream. So where is that coming from? So we can use a stream from iRandom access stream. We're setting a content type. We can take a look at the ms-appdata loading that we already have in other locations. So we have bitmap image, we have SvgImageSource, not the one that we want, so bitmap image. Let's take a look at what we're doing in other locations with bitmap image. Okay, so we have the file. So do we have another location where we have AppData that's being used? Actually, we probably should be looking at the AppData URI evaluator and trying to find we should be able to use this directly and have a local path that we. Okay, so we need to be using AppData URI evaluator and provide that directly to our. Could just open that file directly. Okay, so let's try to do that. So here the method is not async. We need so we have the image data from URL, but nothing's async here. So we're probably going to have to do to become async at that location because it's not what we need currently. we're gonna have to do storage file from path, I think. That's what that is. Okay, still taking a bit of time. Let's add storage directly. So storage file, and then we have get file from path. We have a synchronous version. It's probably not the right way to do it, but it's internal, so it should be good. Well, let's use the synchronous version for now. And we need to do if your scheme is a ms-appdata. I think that was the right way. There's probably a better way to compare this. I'm not too sure, but let's assume that's the right way to do it. We have appdata URI evaluator to path, and then we provided the URI. Actually, let's see what the to path is doing. Okay, so if the scheme is not the right one, we have an exception. So we should be skipping that part for now. Okay, so we have enough either, so we're gonna have to do something different there, because the file here needs to be a storage an random access stream, and to do this we have to do some awaits because the APIs are not built for that. So we have an async image here. Maybe we should just be using the try open source async instead of the try open source sync. It's probably the best way. I was looking at the wrong part. Okay, so if so we have a URI. So the URI is something that comes from absolute URI. So if we do have an absolute URI, if you have an absolute URI and the scheme is an ms-appdata, then we can await at that location. We can make a task and then await for that, because we're returning a task. So we can probably just do create a separate method that we invoke that becomes async. So we're going to be creating an async image, and we're going to be returning an async method at that location. So we're saying open from stream. What's that one? It's different. It's from image source, but it uses a different URL. That's not what we want. So we really want an open from ms-appdata. So we're going to be creating that method for now. And we need the absolute URI. So let's provide it through. I'll remove the other part, but I think we do have an ms-appdata somewhere in the it's private constant, so I would have hoped that we had an appdata schema. Okay, so we'll change that later on. So we're going to be opening the ms-appdata. It's going to be returning an image async, and it's not going to be a stream. It's going to be an image data. And once we have this, now we can start using the APIs for storage that are async. So if we go back to opening our data URI evaluator to path We're getting the actual file path, and we're going to be doing storage file get file from path async. That's the file, and then we can open the file to get a storage, to get a random access stream. And then that stream we're going to provide to the other method that we did have, which is open from stream here, because we can try set the content there. Okay, so we're going to be opening the stream. So the stream is going to be storage file. That's actually file, not storage file. So we can do open read async. And then we set the content type in the stream, and we can fall back into the existing API that we have. So try set content type is not available because it's part of our random access stream, and my stream here is you have to await. So we await our stream. So we have a random access stream with content type. Oh, it was already set as content type. So that's interesting. Random access stream with content type. So it already has a we get one with a content type already. Probably because we have a okay, so if I set the access mode, we probably would not we would be able to set the proper I'm gonna open async with a file access mode. We're going to do read, so it's going to be the right type this time. It's random access stream, and then we can provide that to open from stream, and we need to await the open from stream. And it's returning an image data, and it's not happy because nothing. Okay, just IntelliSense that was lagging. Okay, so we have something of interest now. And we're returning an async image here. And we should be returning true because we have and then that's it. So now what we need to do is create a sample that will show that file. And to show that file, we can go to probably image. We have image brush, not that one. We have image somewhere in there, image tests, and we probably will have image source from stream. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the from stream one and use that as a base for ms-appdata. And because we already have files, so we can just assume that the will be appropriate. Okay, and we need to change also the name of the sample. We have a selected sample. What's that for? Is it another class? It's another class, so that's good. So we have a selected stretch, image width, rasterizer path, so we don't care. And then instead of using the selected source here, we're going to get the file and we're going to copy it to one of the folders that that makes sense. So we should be changing the test for this. Or do we? So the question here is it appropriate to do the same test that we're doing right now using an actual UI test that has some content, or if you can make a runtime test? I'm actually wondering, because the path that we're going to be providing here is probably not the one that we want. Or we can do, instead of using couch calendar and others, we can do something like temp folder. I think it was, I don't remember which one there were. So we have local, temp, and roaming. So let's do that. Roaming doesn't make sense that much at that point. Because in a browser you're not really roaming, and it was related to the ability to use the same app in UWP between machines. It's still used. It's just that in a browser it doesn't make that much sense, because there's no way to share the content between one browser to another browser instance. Okay, so we have the selected source. We can get the URI. The path, so that we set the source properly. Okay, so can we copy the file? Copy the file to destination. To be doing a small switch, and we're going to select selected source dot name. Is it name switch? So if it is local, then we do storage folder dot I don't remember. No, it's not. It's application data, I think. Application data dot current dot you get local folder. There you go. That's the first one. Then we're going to do that for the others. Temp, I think we have temp for the current. Roaming folder. There you go. Okay, so we're going to be copying the file to the destination, and I think there's a collision option that we can provide. Yes, there's a collision option. So design new name. We're going to be using the exact same name, so that would be i.name. That looks right. And for the collision option, we're just going to be replacing the existing one so that we can rerun the test multiple times. There you go. So we have our target folder. We've copied the file, and it's located. It will be located at the right position. And now what we need to do is set the source of the SvgImageSource with an ms the URI source. So we're going to create a new URI here. So if we take a look at the format that needs to be used explicitly, it's that format. and then we append the file name, I would guess. And there's no subpaths in that context, but it would work the same way. So maybe we'll test it with a different, I think the files are in locations. Actually, they are in separate locations, but we're going to be copying at the root of the folder for now. Okay, so we have a URI source with an ms-appdata. We have our file has been copied. We need to await, otherwise it may not be copied right away. And we need to copy it to the target folder. And the switch is not happy because it's missing the fallback. There you go. So unsupported MS targets, so that we have the right content, and then we can set rasterized pixels and things like that we don't need to modify at that point. Good. Let's take a look. So now we have built our sample. We have changed the SvgImageSource in a try open source async so that we can read the file. Use of the appdata URI evaluator that's provided internally in Uno, which converts an ms-appdata into a local file path. And we have our new sample, which is an extract of another sample that was our SvgImageSource, but for which we've modified the name of the sample so that we can read individual versions of the SVG files from local storage. So that looks so you see that there's I have a formatting issue. For now it's not failing, but if I were to push, we'd have to fix this, and most likely we need to put the curly brace at the and on the new line. That's probably what is being asked here. Okay, so there's something that happened recently. I wonder. Yeah, okay. So our sample app is reloading, and now we're going to be going to image and not that one. Image and search for the SvgImageSource with from ms-appdata. And we have our temp. Okay. Okay, so temp folder is not working for some reason. Local is, and roaming is working, but temp is not. So it means that we're either using a path that does not exist, or maybe there's an exception somewhere. So let's go take a look. So if I go back to our ms-appdata, let's go see what the debugger tells us. Oh, that's a very large. Okay, so we have multiple errors there. But it looks like we have not written the file at it says error while changing SVG properties. So that's probably because we're trying to write something, but is it so we're at line we're trying to create a file in the temp folder. That's probably because the temp folder does not exist. And it's weird because it's called temp here, and my guess would be that the actual temp folder does not exist. Because when we're on in the browser, the temp folder is called /tmp and not temp, but it may not exist altogether as well. So let's go find out what we have there. Yeah, it doesn't exist at all. Okay, so we probably would need to create it. So we can see that we have a few files there, and we can see that we have 2 local files. So it looks like the roaming is pointing to local, which is probably fine. Correct. So it may be something that we can fix, or we probably should be creating the temporary folders. So temporary folder is moving to temp. Yeah, the temp folder is not available completely. But I'm not sure if the folder is there to begin with. Probably should have been created. We should be creating that folder. If someone's trying to get it, we should be materializing that folder. And temp as a full name is quite odd. It's not supposed to be a large temp like this. But anyways, okay, so we have an idea of what that is. What that means is really that the temporary folders does not exist. So it's not a problem about loading the image, because the image loading is actually working. Because we could see that when we were selecting the file, that the other files for the other ms-appdata. So when we go to roaming, we can see that the file is loaded properly. And that's one of the interesting things. You can take a look at the loaded content here. And the filled, uniform to fill, and others are working properly, so that's nice. So if you take a look at the current source, we can see that there's an SVG, a data image source here that's provided directly as an SVG. So that's quite interesting. So it worked properly. So that's very nice. There's a few things that we need to adjust before the end, and I think we had that seems a bit odd, in a sense that there's probably a better way somewhere in Uno to do that validation, I would guess. Otherwise, it's just done. Yeah. So, instead of using ms-appdata every time, is appdata URI. And we're just going to be doing the same thing, but it's going to be better than just doing this every time. So URI ms-appdata. Equals, and we're going to do a ordinal ignore case. Not supposed to be uppercase, but it doesn't change that much. So it's appdata URI evaluator is appdata URI. There you go. So that's loading from SvgImageSource. So that's it for today. Well, that was in URI. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you want to follow me on Twitch, click the button if you're on Twitch directly, and so you will be notified when I start streaming. And that's it for today. I hope you learned a bunch about digging into SvgImageSource and data binding of flyouts. And until next week, happy coding, and see you next time. Bye for now.